At the start of the movie, we see a young Irish fisherman named Syracuse ventures into the waters off the coast of Ireland to fish. One fateful day, he discovers an unconscious woman tangled in his fishing nets. Concerned for her safety, he brings her aboard and is relieved to find that, upon regaining consciousness, she appears unharmed. However, the woman behaves strangely. She refuses any kind of medical help and cannot recall her name, leading Syracuse to believe she's suffering from amnesia. But to help for the time being, he takes her to his late mother's house, offers her a meal, and suggests she stay there to recuperate. Later that day, Syracuse has to tend to another pressing matter, his young daughter Annie, who lives with his ex-wife Maura. Annie requires regular dialysis treatments, and Syracuse takes her to the hospital for her procedure. While waiting, he entertains her with a story about a fisherman who catches a mysterious woman from the sea. Annie listens to her father, and in the end, she tells him about selkies, a mythical sea creature she learned about at school. She explains that selkies occasionally come ashore, but must eventually return to the sea when called back. After Annie's treatment, Syracuse takes her to purchase an electric wheelchair, then takes her home. When they arrive, she happily shows off her new chair to her stepdad. While the moment brings joy, it is quickly overshadowed by Maura's sharp criticism of Syracuse for not discussing a potential kidney transplant with the doctor. The conversation leaves Syracuse feeling inadequate. However, he still chooses to always be there for Annie. The following morning, Syracuse sees his mysterious guest by the stream near his house, washing clothes and singing in an unfamiliar language. She asks if she can join him on his fishing trip, and he reluctantly agrees. On board, she introduces herself as Ondine, explaining that her name means from the water. During the trip, Syracuse notices something extraordinary. Although the lobster pots initially come up empty, when Ondine begins to sing in a very sweet tone, the pots start to fill with an abundant catch. After the catch, Ondine helps Syracuse pull in the haul as he throws the smaller lobsters back into the sea. But despite her contributions to the catch, she firmly refuses to accompany him to the market, as she does not want others to see her. In the market, Syracuse sells the lobsters to surprise buyers and uses part of the earnings to buy a dress for Ondine. He then picks up Annie from school, as he continues with the story of the fisherman and the mysterious woman. In the tale, he mentions that the woman's singing draws fish, making the fisherman's dreams come true. In the end, Annie is surprised at how close to reality the story sounded, and starts to wonder if the tale is more than just a story. So, after dropping Annie back at Maura's house, Syracuse returns home, unaware that Annie is stalking him. When she arrives at her grandmother's cottage, she sees her father talking with a strange woman by the window. In the meantime, Syracuse asks Ondine how long she plans to stay, and when she hesitates, he impulsively tells her that she can stay forever, as he starts to imagine a fairy tale ending for them. Annie, who overhears this, starts to grow even more curious and later visits the library to research selkies. Meanwhile, Syracuse starts to worry over his life. So he goes for a confession at church, where he tells the priest that he is a recovering alcoholic, who has been sober for over 2 years but is still haunted by troubling dreams. He explains that in one recurring nightmare, he had attended the funeral of Maura's new husband, Alex, and eventually reunited with Maura thereafter, although she is still battling her own drinking issues. In the end, the priest suggests that he seek professional help, but Syracuse declines, as he emphasizes the confidentiality of confession. He then shares the secret of how he had found Ondine and hid her, to which the priest offers little guidance beyond encouraging him to attend mass service. Back at the cottage, Ondine starts to busy herself with cleaning and exploring the items Syracuse bought for her. She is particularly intrigued by a pair of fishnet stockings, stretching them over her hands to create a webbed appearance. Her fascination with these simple items suggests that she is unfamiliar with the human world. The next day, Annie visits her grandmother's cottage and eventually catches Ondine swimming in the water. Showing no fear, Annie approaches Ondine and confidently tells her that she knows that the tale of the fisherman and the selkie isn't just a story, but a real-life event. She then tells Ondine about her illness and asks if she has the power to heal her. Ondine gently explains that she has no magic, though she quickly grows fond of Annie's curiosity and bold nature. Annie, who soon becomes eager to learn more about Ondine's world, starts to interview her. She insists that she be honest with her, as she believes that it to be the foundation of their budding friendship for them. So, she asks about what life underwater is like, to which Ondine replies that it has its ups and downs, much like life on land, though singing is easier under the waves. So, Annie eagerly shares her newfound knowledge about selkies, ones that she had gathered from books she's read. According to the books, selkies can stay on land for up to 7 years, provided they find happiness with a human. She then suddenly shifts the conversation, as she tells Ondine about her late grandmother, as she tells her how much her father still misses her. While Annie starts to head home, Ondine asks her to visit again. Meanwhile, Syracuse visits the library to research selkies for himself, only to discover that Annie has already taken all the relevant books. At the same time, Annie meets some neighborhood kids who were showing off their bikes. In a bid to impress them, she lets one of the girls play with her electric wheelchair, but it soon runs out of power and gets stuck in the water. The other kids eventually abandon her, and Annie is forced to make her way home alone. When she arrives, Alex recharges the wheelchair battery, and when she asks about selkies, he tells her about the selkies from his native Scotland. However, Annie tells him that Ondine speaks a language entirely different from anything she's heard before. In the meantime, Syracuse finds Ondine sitting on a pontoon in the middle of the bay and offers her a ride back to his boat. When he asks her to steer the boat for him, Ondine instinctively hides when a patrol boat speeds by, choosing to steer the boat with her foot instead. So Syracuse teases her for her resourcefulness, but the lighthearted moment is soon interrupted when Ondine starts singing the sweet melody once more. As Syracuse pulls up his fishing net, he's astonished to find it brimming with salmon, a rare and valuable catch for those waters. However, the moment is soon cut short when the patrol boat returns to them. The wildlife officers boarded the vessel and inspected the catch, as they demanded to see the nets he used to make the catch. Syracuse shows them his usual nets, which are completely dry, proving he caught the salmon fairly. When officers find Ondine in hiding, they question her about the catch, and she confirms Syracuse's story. Satisfied with their findings, the officers leave, and the pair sail to the harbor to sell their catch. Grateful for her help, Syracuse offers to buy Ondine a gift. So, she asks for a new dress and insists on choosing it herself. On their way to the store, they encounter Annie, who is thrilled that their story seems to be more than just a fairy tale. Annie eagerly helps Ondine pick out an outfit, while the townspeople stare in awe at the mysterious and beautiful newcomer. Later, Annie visits her grandmother's cottage, now bright and inviting thanks to Ondine's efforts. Ondine offers to teach Annie how to swim, and they spend time together in the shallow waters. While playing, Ondine spots something under the water and goes to retrieve a bundle. Annie, who is excited by this, calls it a selkie clothing, as she explains the legend that if the clothing is buried, a selkie can remain on land for 7 years unless she is claimed by their sea husband. So, they act on this advice, as Ondine buries the bundle in a greenhouse while Annie carefully counts the steps to memorize the location. Annie later tells her father about the bundle and warns him to be wary of strangers. Days later, the family attends a local festival by boat, where Annie pushes Ondine to admit to her that she is magic. Still pushing for truth, Annie pretends her wheelchair brakes have failed and falls into the water, hoping to test Ondine's supposed powers. Without hesitation, Ondine dives in to rescue her, as she manages to pull her to safety. After coming out of the waters, Syracuse carries Annie home and hands her over to Maura and Alex to their deep relief. As they return home, Ondine tells Syracuse the wheelchair's brakes were fine and that Annie staged the incident to see if she could breathe underwater. As he starts to feel the need to open up to her, Syracuse confesses his past struggles with alcoholism. He recounts the pivotal moment when he had returned home to find Maura passed out beside their unconscious daughter. That scare had led him to quit drinking, as he had realized that one parent needed to stay sober to care for Annie. At the same time, Maura warns Annie about a dark-haired stranger who had been asking questions about Ondine. The news comes as a shock to Annie, and she dreams of selkie legends that night. Meanwhile, Syracuse and Ondine's relationship starts to grow deeper, and they share an intimate moment that evening. The next day, Syracuse confesses his guilt to the priest, admitting he fears the happiness Ondine brings might be too good to last. But the priest encourages him to embrace hope, although Syracuse remains wary, torn between the anticipation and dread. After leaving the church, Syracuse meets an unfamiliar man who is asking about Ondine. He refuses to engage with the man as Syracuse drives away. Later, when he returns home after Annie's dialysis, he finds his house broken into and Ondine missing. He frantically searches the shore until he eventually finds her hiding. In the end, she reveals that her sea husband has come for her. That night, disaster strikes when the stranger who is still searching for Ondine collides with Maura's car while driving intoxicated. Alex is thrown through the windshield, and Annie sustains some injuries. At the moment, Syracuse and Ondine happen to be driving past that part of town, and he immediately recognized the car, and he rushed to the scene to find the medics taking Annie to the hospital. Unfortunately, when they arrive at the hospital, they learn that Alex did not survive, but that he is a compatible kidney donor for Annie. After discovering this, an immediate transplant is scheduled for Annie. While still waiting at the hospital, Ondine comes face to face with the stranger in the hallway. He immediately starts to question why she speaks their language and that she doesn't belong here, hinting at a connection to the sea. However, Ondine tells him to go back and let her be. The next morning, Annie awakens and immediately asks for Ondine. Syracuse reassures her they'll see her soon, as he starts to become hopeful that their unusual family might yet find some happiness together. Days later, Alex's cremation ceremony takes place, and as Maura scatters his ashes into the sea, she reflects with regret that this time, she can't blame Syracuse for everything. So, she asks Syracuse to take full custody of Annie on the condition that he gets rid of Ondine. Later that evening, she persuades Syracuse to drink to Alex's memory, and in the end, Syracuse soon becomes intoxicated by the drinks. He stumbles to the boat where he finds Ondine hiding, and he angrily calls her a selkie. He then takes her out to sea, as he insists that she needs to return to her supposed husband and sing her songs for him instead. So, he sails to the base of a lighthouse and orders her to leave. He tells her that he is now convinced that life isn't a fairy tale and that humans and selkies don't belong together. When Ondine asks to say goodbye to Annie, Syracuse ignores her and sails away. As the sun sets, we see that Ondine's silhouette on a log resembles a mermaid waiting for the night. And when darkness eventually falls, we see her diving into the sea. The next morning, Syracuse wakes with deep regret. After bringing Annie home from the hospital, she tries to comfort him and assure him that Ondine will return because she left something behind. Later that morning, when Annie watches TV, Syracuse recognizes a song from an Icelandic band. That was when Syracuse realized that Ondine's songs were lyrics from a song, not some selkie magic. Finally realizing that she's a human, he quickly rushes to the lighthouse to find her. And after a frantic search along the shore, he finally spots her warming herself on a rock. At first, Ondine pretends she's a selkie who buried her magical clothes to stay on land. But when he pressed for the truth, she told him that her real name is Ioana, a Romanian courier who transports illegal substances by sea. During a police raid, her guard had panicked and threw her overboard, leaving her to nearly drown until Syracuse's net had saved her. When they return home that night, they find the strange man and another man holding Annie hostage in the house. The men demanded for the hidden package Ondine had buried. So, Annie leads them to the greenhouse, only to discover that the package isn't there anymore. In the end, Annie tells them that she has moved it to the lobster crate on the boat. While attempting to retrieve the package, Ondine suddenly throws one of the men overboard, while Syracuse disarms the other and tosses him into the sea as well. Soon the police arrive and arrest the second man after realizing the stranger is dead already. Towards the end of the movie, we see that Ondine now faces deportation, and the only criterion to stay is for her to gain citizenship. In the meantime, Annie confesses to the priest, as she playfully tells him that her father is getting married soon. The film then ends with a joyous scene where we see the fisherman and his bride sail off on their honeymoon, and bringing their unlikely fairy tale to life. And that is the recap of the movie Ondine. If you enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel. See you in our next recap.